Welcome to Popcorned Planet. I am Andy Signore, and we've been streaming for, 8 hours? Oh my God, I'm losing my mind. Steph, thank you for being here near the end. Kim and Lewis, thank you for being here throughout the stream. But we are going to break down today's day 2 trial of the Gwyneth Paltrow ski crash. Today was definitely hard. It was just 2 experts. They took forever. And I don't really think anything valuable came out of it, if I'm being honest. The most interesting thing happened at the start of the trial, and we have the clips right here, where, yes, I think she flipped out. Gwyneth Paltrow flipped out over the press being there. Now, she's right. We're going to explain it. I talked to Christopher Melcher to get his thoughts, but I want you guys to see this clip. Here is Gwyneth's lawyer complaining about a new camera that is aimed at her.
Your Honor, we have a new camera pointed directly at my client. Right there on the right, which we understand is from the AP. This is
During the recess, I'll have the court representative, Tanya, take a look at how that camera's pointed and make sure that it's pointed at the lectern rather than at the counsel table.
And this has been a problem where, for instance, reporters being in front of my client's car going out yesterday, cameras in her face, like inches away.
During the recess with Tanya and talk to her about that. I've already talked to her about the fact that you've raised this issue yesterday, and I recognize it as a problem.
And I want to be advised if there are new changes, because it's just by chance that we see that there's a camera pointed directly at her, which is contrary to the decorum order. So I don't want changes without reporters telling you.
I think that's a reasonable request, so thank you.
Now you can tell here she's mad. She's clearly watching the feed, because if you know how a camera works, it's aimed right at that direction of the lectern, which is the podium next to her, but they're zoomed in. So it's really unclear who they're zoomed at. So you can, she was holding her phone. I had a shot earlier where I was watching. She's got her glasses on. It's clear she's probably watching the feed. Maybe she's watching us, Steph, who knows?
On the right.
But she's watching and seeing herself on there, and she's pissed. Now, if they have a deal, as Christopher told me, I'm going to read, let me see what he said here, because I have a second shot we'll go to in a second to play. It's a public court proceeding, so there's nothing private about her facial expressions in court. But if the court made an order directing that the video be taken only of a witness on the stand, an attorney making an argument, or the judge making a statement, that could be constitutional. So yeah, in theory, if the rule was the camera's aimed at the lectern and the guest on the testimony, that's the rule, which I guess is what it is. But no, they put up another camera and aimed it directly at Gwyneth, because honestly, that's what we care about. That's why we're watching this trial. We would not care if it was some random dude and a skiing incident. We obviously are all here because it's Gwyneth Paltrow, and she's a public figure. She's a celebrity. It's kind of just weird and off-putting her out the gate. I understand, but the lawyer's clearly not pushing this. This is her complaining. Why am I all over? Why are the photos? Why are the paparazzi bothering me? It's because you're Gwyneth Paltrow, you weirdo. I mean, duh. And sucks to be you, or does it? I mean, that's kind of what comes with being famous. So sorry, but not sorry. That's why we're here covering this case. And we are allowed to, because it's a public courtroom. If we wanted to go to that courtroom, we could go there and stare at your face all day long, Gwyneth. So I don't understand why she's making a big deal. And this complaining about it just is the exact thing that I don't like about her. This, don't film me, don't photograph me. It's like this aura of her and this elitism that I think is very off-putting for a lot of people. Now, all that said, I'm on Team Gwyneth in this case. Even though I'm not a fan of her as a person, I will say, based on what I've seen so far, I'm on Team Gwyneth so far. There's no evidence that that it was the other way around. I just don't see it yet. But I don't like how Gwyneth handled this. And you can tell she pushed her lawyer to make this a thing, to push the judge, and getting upset as she stares. How dare you film me? This is just, you guys are just the worst. Why are you filming me? 'Cause you're on trial, girl. You're on trial. And what's crazy about this trial is her kids, her husband, they're all going to be on trial. They're all going to be here testifying, and that's what's going to end up happening. So you could have settled. You could have done a lot of things to avoid this.
That I referenced was a violation of the decorum order. That's the second violation in 2 days. Still photographer directly on my client's face, already transmitted nationally. So I'm mad. The decorum order we spent a lot of time on. It's the court's order. People are subject to criminal sanction, and I want it to stop. I don't want to have to be the one raising it. I want them to comply.
The camera's been removed. As far as what's going on in the parking lot, I'm not going to conflate that with this.
No idea what's happening in the parking lot for the record, but I guess a lot of paparazzi are bothering her in her car, just like they were when Johnny got in his car. What? I mean, duh.
This photographer who's doing something differently.
She's also countersuing. So this is you did this.
The what's going on in the parking lot is Tanya's has worked with your staff in determining how to handle the parking lot transitions, and I think that's been smoothed out. In terms of violation of the court's decorum order and have the camera pointing where it's not supposed to be pointing, I mean, essentially, cameras are supposed to follow the microphone.
Yep.
This is what the court has permitted is media coverage of the proceeding, not of the individuals who aren't participating in the proceeding when they're not participating. So if you're speaking into a microphone, you can expect that an image may be captured. If you're not speaking into a microphone, you should not be expecting that an image would be captured.
So when her lawyer's
I do see
speaking,
this as a violation,
she's next to her lawyer.
And I've asked that the reporter be told that this is now interrupting our proceedings. It's now interfering with our proceedings, having to deal with these issues. And if it happens again, the offending reporter will be asked to leave.
Great. And the still photographer is to stay in his seat when taking pictures. Is that right? Stay in his location.
Unless we're all standing, then they can stand and take a picture.
How about entering and exiting? Can they be in
Oh
the
my
path
God!
of my client?
The fact that
No.
we're wasting time because Gwyneth can't
have
be
a new
photographed. Really, Gwyneth? This is the look you want to give everybody while you know you're being broadcast. This just, it's so hard to root for her, Steph. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, no matter what my opinions of this case are, my opinions of Gwyneth are the complete opposite because this whole argument is so dumb. Why are we wasting time and the court's time and the judge? And if anything, like, do it when I guess everything needs to be recorded, so it is what it is. But she knows this is going to be broadcast. Doesn't this make her look annoying?
Yeah. You know, imagine if Johnny Depp pulled this stunt. Or better yet, imagine if Amber the Turd pulled this stunt. Like, this is not a good look. It's really not a good look. People are tuning into this case quite simply because of her. Really, in the grand scheme of things. So, what is she to expect? Sorry, it's the reality of things. But, on the other hand, if I'm to play devil's advocate here, if it was already agreed by the court in terms of the parameters of where the cameras are supposed to be and how the cameras are supposed to act and not act, and the Associated Press in this instance is going against that, then yeah, her lawyer, she does have a right to pipe up and be like, oh, they're not playing about rules, sort it out.
They have a right, but it makes them look stupid. That's what I say.
Maybe this could have been dealt with privately within the judge's chambers. Like, have a meeting before the actual official proceedings start.
Yeah, it's true. Coda chambers.
The judge's
can we
chambers.
Speak? Correct.
Yeah.
But he wants the cameras to hear it. It's almost like they're doing it on purpose. And
correct. Yeah.
As Sarah says in the chat, Sarah Cagle.
You've got Terry's lawyers all in chambers, and they argue the toss then in terms of cameras. Doing it here don't make it makes her look worse.
Yeah, it's Sarah Cagle. You said that this tantrum is making her extremely unlikable. Facts. And as Melissa says, this is really bringing to light how much we have entitled people. We hate entitled people. It's true. Like, come on, Gwyneth. Come ready. Know you're on. You got to go to work today. You know you're going to be on camera. It's a public courthouse. It is what it is. Don't countersue. Settle. Avoid the court then if you don't want this to be broadcast. We have a right. It's part of it. How the system works, and anybody can have this happen to them. So you're not above the law, you know, the rules and everything else. And just because you're famous and you got to have some decorum rules because you're famous and you made it such a big deal, it just makes her very unlikable. Very unlikable. So all that said, that was like the biggest, most interesting thing today, where she got upset. What ended up happening later throughout the case, was here we have this clip.
Camera that I referenced was
Sorry,
a violation of the decorum
This
order.
is more of
That's
the decorum orders. We just did that. This is we had two witnesses on.
Concussion and the broken ribs. What opinions do you draw about
Yeah, this is how slow it was.
the extent of Terry Sanderson's injuries?
Well, I don't think it was, just a minor bump. He had enough force to knock him unconscious, enough force to have persisting cranial symptoms that are documented in the record, and enough force to break 4 of the ribs on the right side of his chest. And that, along with the deceleration of striking the ground, I think I think that the rib fractures certainly corroborate that there was enough force to cause a head injury. And of course, he was complaining of the rib pain immediately after the accident, and subsequently had this evaluated by the Instacare, and then I think he went to the Veterans Hospital probably because he was a vet and had the ability to get free care there.
So was it pushed to that was the ER. So he went there because all of this is just, again, this is now the prosecution's like star doctor who was like, yep, I know what happened. I can tell what happened. And
answered my next question. What injuries did this crash cause? Is there anything else?
Well, I think those are the ones that are described in the record. He does have some abnormalities on his spine, both in the cervical area.
So they're serious.
Which healed over a period of
doesn't
months.
Even seem that
Rib
way, does
fractures
it?
can be very, very painful. And in some cases, they will go in and plate the ribs back together in order to reduce the risk of lung puncture.
So he's hyping this up in there. So, but here's how he says how it happened.
What's your opinion as to how this crash, these injuries were caused?
I think based on the stated testimony of the defendant, Craig Ramon, who was the only eyewitness, and based upon the pattern of injuries that are present here, what I believe
based on the testimony of the guy who saw it, so I'm just going to base it on that. Okay, well, then you're not really using your expert opinion, are you? Then based on the injuries
happened is that...
And the reason I'm pausing and clarifying this is because yesterday we heard the lawyer make a big deal about how this doctor came in and made it very clear that these injuries only could have happened the way that Terry and the witness are saying. Only way.
He was struck from the left side, and that forced him into the ground. It's also been the testimony here that Ms. Paltrow was on top of him at some point, so the combined weight of the two individuals slamming into the ground caused the fracture and the head injury. And I don't think it would be plausible that if he were running into her that he would have broken the ribs on the side of his chest. He likely would have had his arms extended. He would have protected himself. He would have had knees, arms, etc. in front of his chest. And so he might have had other injuries. He could have broken a leg or an arm or a wrist or something like that. But in terms of a frontal collision, had he run into Ms. Paltrow, I don't think he would have had these types of injuries. And I also think, just given the differential in mass of the people involved, I think she would have broken his fall, so to speak, reduced his collision velocity and the impact, and probably had he been the person
I think she would have done that.
I think she would have broken his fall. What?
I don't think he would sustain these types of injuries.
I think, no.
That was the most like, that was the big thing. And Steph, I remember specifically the lawyer's like, it only could have gone one way because he had his arm up. and he only did that because the way he fell down to protect himself. Like, none of this makes a lick of sense. If someone bumped into me, I would put my arms out, not have my arm like this. Like, if I'm running into someone, chances are I'm going to do this action that pushes my arm in to break my ribs, is what he claims happened. So I don't understand how the hell this expert is supposed to sway us any way or the other. Are you?
No, because again, he says, I think. Like, that is essentially him turning around and saying, I know bull. I think this happened. I think this happened. Not this happened because, and here's the evidence to support. It's all like, it's essentially to me like the equivalent of hearsay. Doesn't matter what you think. What happened and what's your evidence to support it? Dude's BSing all over the place.
Now, our Clark Kent, everyone we like, this lawyer here, this younger Clark Kent lawyer, he did a cross.
It'd be good to see you again. I have a couple questions before we break for lunch about this comment that you made about Mr. Sanderson having a good relationship with his daughters. You read some of their testimony, is that correct?
So he read testimony about Terry, the skier, with his daughters, and said, "Oh, he has a good relationship." And the lawyer's like, guys, hold my beer. Let's correct this."
Do you recall reading about Jenny Sanderson, one of his daughters?
Hey, I don't remember the names exactly, but maybe
Okay.
you can refresh my
Sure.
memory. The one was, I think the one that I recall reading was
Blah, blah,
the
blah.
high
I know.
school, and then two depositions of the.
That
Okay,
maybe
sure.
came up in some not feel loved or nurtured by her. She did not feel loved
It's
or
the daughter did not
nurtured
feel
by her
loved or
father growing
nurtured.
up. Did you read about that?
I didn't read her deposition then because I did not see any of that testimony.
And this may have been discussed in some of the other daughters' depositions, so I'll just keep reading in case
Sure.
you read about any of these other statements. There's also testimony that Mr. Sanderson was domineering and emotionally and verbally abusive to Jenny and her mother, Tana. Do you recall reading anything about that?
No, I do recall some testimony about him being angry with the man that was having an affair with his wife, and that was atypical for him. I think he was, punched him or something, but that was listed as very atypical in Terry's behavior.
Okay, what about, did you hear any testimony about Mr. Sanderson becoming frustrated if his expectations weren't met, and this is referring to his children?
No, I don't recall that.
What about testimony that he has always been easily frustrated and quick to anger?
I think that testimony is contradicted by other testimony by the daughter, but no,
But
it was not
I don't
aware
remember,
of that.
but I remember that.
Okay, what about testimony that his frustration was visible in his body language and in the
What a
way he would
wonderful
talk?
thing, a selective memory, eh, guys?
Like I said, I don't think I've read this deposition.
What about testimony that he did not speak with one of his daughters, Jenny, for 13 years?
Anyway, they paint a very not a good picture, and I imagine as we get closer, we're going to paint that picture even more vividly. They painted a bad
I think
picture,
you've
and they
also
also did not make the expert's testimony seem very credible. Now, the next thing I want to point out is they had this other guy. We call him Colonel Sanders back here. I'm just a country lawyer. His total Southern movie stereotype lawyer. I see. Look at here. It's just very funny to watch. And then we had Tom Jones here. This was a neuroscientist, right, Steph? A neuroscience
Dude knew
expert.
stuff about the brain, apparently.
He was the brain expert. He was there to pretty much, for the prosecution, to sort of like reiterate, like, yeah, this damage is real and can happen. And what was really interesting about this coverage was he was not as pro-prosecution as I think they were hoping. He was a lot better of an expert and a witness because he was more credible to me, because he did answer some things that I'm sure the prosecution didn't like. And yeah, overall, he was just sort of like, yeah, this can happen, but I wasn't there, so something else could happen too. And basically just acknowledging that, yeah, there's brain damage. She had some brain damage, but also more can happen. But this part here in the cross was the most damning to me.
I think you've also previously testified that this obsessing over the accident is kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. That's a quotation from your transcript here that I'm reading. Do you recall that?
Correct.
And you say, as time goes on, it maybe in part becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because no one sits him down and says, hey, look, you had some of these problems before. The accident is a catalyst, but really not a primary cause of some of your difficulties, Do you recall saying that?
Correct. And we were talking in that case about, for example, his reports of problems with memory or new learning, which, again, the test data suggests he's capable of doing those things.
Yeah, and then I believe
there was a whole section before. I was trying to clip this as we were live. This has happened recently. He was obsessed with the accident and the aftermath, and it started getting his head, and it started to really affect him, is what basically this was admitting, and that he was more hurt and everything else because he had sort of got in his head that this accident hurt him, and that's what happened. Not that his age or anything else could have done it.
you were aware of Dr. Fong's evaluation, correct?
Correct.
And Dr. Fong reported that she had received a report from Mr. Sanderson that he'd fallen a number of years after the accident, hit his head, and was unconscious for 45 minutes. Do you recall that?
Well, I was in court this morning when it came up, and as I sat in court, I did not recall it, and I don't recall that we discussed it in my deposition. And so I'd want to know the chronology of when that event occurred and the time I saw him.
So we could go to your deposition, page 58 and 59.
That's pretty effed up. So there another accident to his head. He was unconscious out of it for 45 minutes, and they didn't give it to the brain guy.
So if you go to the bottom of page 58,
they skipped that part when the brain guy did all his research, and the brain guy, his credit.
You're right. You're correct.
Admits.
Yes, I apologize.
That. No, that's fine. So you'd read that.
This was also refreshing because previously the witness refused to accept anything from testimony.
Yeah.
He was super defensive to protect Terry, it seemed. That's how it came across to me. And this guy was very quick to correct himself if he was wrong.
This report had been made, but you had not received a report about that, correct?
Correct. He didn't tell me about it, and I didn't see any medical records reflecting it.
Right, and you thought that if it's that severe, if he was out for 45 minutes, that there should probably be a medical record, correct?
Correct, and we'd have to consider the possible contribution of that event to his problems. Again, the chronology, I still don't know when he saw Dr. Fong versus when he said he had that accident.
Yeah, I can proffer to you that it was at the time of Dr. Fong's deposition, he had reported it to her, and that was a few years ago.
But he reported it to her as occurring before the skiing accident?
After the accident.
After the
Do you
skiing
recall
accident.
that? Yeah.
Yeah, so that would be after the skiing accident. This sounds like a Laurel and Hardy movie here. But after the skiing accident, but before he saw me.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, it's important information.
Yeah.
I really don't know anything about it.
And he did not tell you about it.
Correct.
Right.
Dude, this is all about the head expert. This is all about the trauma, right? That he suffered stuff and all this stuff. Why wouldn't they disclose this? This happened. It's proven it happened. And their own press.
I think Gwynny didn't like us. Gwynny tried
All right,
to shut
sorry,
us
guys.
down.
We're back. We've been streaming for so long that I think it was not Gwyneth. I think it was more just my OBS decided to take a crap because we've been streaming so long. So apologies. We're back. All right. I have to, I don't know what happened there. There was a little hiccup. So let me correct where we were ending. I think we were talking about the brain expert and the fact that they didn't tell the damn brain expert that he had a brain injury. That, coupled with the first witness not seeming very credible, add to that their first doctor who suddenly is going to be the savior on this case and reveal how it had to be Gwyneth who hit him. And he really just didn't commit that at all. He was very wishy-washy and not very exciting. Took forever. My God. It was just a bad day, I'd say, for the prosecution. Steph, based on what you saw, do you disagree? Are you still Team Gwyneth regarding the crash? Maybe not personally, but regarding the crash, based on what you're witnessing here.
Yeah, in terms of like the strength of the argument and evidence, the Team Gwynny is kicking the Team Terry's ass all over again, metaphorically speaking instead of physically at this point. Yeah, The thing is, it's like, again, for me, what Team Terry have to prove is that his psychological brain damage conditions either started or were worsened as a result of the collision that he had with Gwyneth Paltrow. And Team Terry's not doing that. It's, I think, and it's all like speculation evidence rather than, no, here's the situation and here's the evidence to back it up. Here's the situation and here's the evidence to back it up. And that's not happening like that at all for Team Terry. So I think Team Quinny is just completely walking all over him right now.
Yeah, it was a mess for Team Terry. And look, I honestly, I'm not a big Gwyneth fan. I've said it. I just don't like her presence about her. It's just very entitled and above me. The nepotism, all of it, just it's hard to ignore it all. Just like it just all wrapped in a nice goop bow. She may be a lovely woman, lovely mom, great. Just not my cup of tea. She just seems too entitled, and I'm not a huge fan. All that said, I'm Team Gwyneth on this because this case seems like it's just a complete cash grab to take advantage of her. And look, no matter how much I dislike some of the qualities of Gwyneth and her leadism, the justice is justice. And in this case, that's what's happening. And I wish they could have just owned that a bit more because sometimes she's so off-putting that it's hard to like want to root and help her, right? But we got to do it regardless. But that's where I see where we're going so far. So we got lots more to cover in this case today. It was brutal. We didn't get, I don't think a lot of you got alerted on the first one because we post videos. Hopefully by tomorrow we'll be on the right schedule. I think we are going to try to cover it again tomorrow. We have, I think, Terry's children coming from what I've heard, some other experts, and then potentially Terry himself in the evening. It'll be very interesting to see his testimony. He has not been there in the court. Gwyneth's been sitting there the whole time giving a side eye, but Terry's been out because apparently the lawyer said, Terry's lawyer said, well, he doesn't want to be re-traumatized or re-triggered or whatever it is. He's just been able to exit the courtroom. Well, we'll see him. They have not hyped him up, in my opinion. They've hyped him up as aggressive and all these negative things. Even the prosecution has acknowledged this. So I'm very curious to see how Terry will be on the stand. And he is scheduled to be on the stand tomorrow at the end of the day. Seeing how these lawyers go, though, I wouldn't be surprised if it's longer. But the judge kind of pretty much said, get your act together. You're running out of time. The plan is for Terry Thursday, and then Terry to finish Thursday morning, and then Gwyneth to take all of Friday. So that way the defense can take over Monday. And they have 7 witnesses on Monday, including Gwyneth's husband and children. Apple and Moses are apparently also supposed to go there. So fascinating where we're going to go. Chat, where do you want me to go? I think we've invested enough time, sadly, that we can handle a couple more days in this case to see where this nets out. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye. Bye.